Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show Instant Reaction podcast from a weekend of action. Thank you very much for joining me, Shane Brennan, tonight, and Brian O'Leary as well. It's quite a busy day. All teams in action this Sunday, pretty much. And I have to start off with the big one. I mean, I remember sitting here on one of the preview shows a couple of weeks ago talking about the Niners being one of the best teams we've seen, of being pretty much an unstoppable juggernaut. Yet we are sitting here today after they have lost to the Cincinnati Bengals 31-17, and it's their third loss in a row. What is your reaction to how the 49ers have turned their season around in the last couple of weeks?
Turned their seasons around in the wrong way, Shane. It's kind of unusual this season. We've had kind of periods and troughs where we put these teams up there as these are the teams. These are the marquee teams. We did it with the Bills. I suppose we've been doing it with the Chiefs all the time. But, we'll come to that. And for large parts of this season, albeit it's early, 49ers looked unstoppable. So we're only right in thinking this team were the number one team in the NFC. But they've now lost 3 games in a row. McCaffrey is playing well, but probably not playing at the level he was a couple of weeks ago. And their defense is kind of playing in sports. They're getting to the quarterback. They're getting sacks at certain times. We had Peter King on during the week. He said it just doesn't seem as cohesive as last year. Their sack numbers are way down, but yet they're winning games convincingly on offense. But Purdy is kind of falling back slightly. I don't want to get too harsh on them because, like, most teams would be happy with the situation they're in and the quarterback and the players they have around them. But Purdy hadn't shown an interception in his career pre the Browns game. He threw interceptions, obviously, in that game. That kind of followed on to Monday night. It was unlikely that he was going to play this week because of the concussion on Monday. It looked like Sam Darnold was set to get his 49ers debut. And then over the course of the last 24 hours, it came out that he'd passed the protocol, which I found a little bit unusual. He looked off again in the game. Some nice throws, but by and large, he didn't seem to be playing at the level in which we saw. And for the Bengals, like, as much as we're talking about the 49ers, it's a really comprehensive win for the Bengals. And we touched on Thursday's show around the fact they were 3-3 coming off the bye week. This could suit them going into San Fran being fresh. And it played out that way. They were much better. Burrow looked back to himself and Chase, the connection was there again.
Yeah, I remember earlier on in the season we talked about Joe Burrow and his injury. We were wondering, why would you play on with him? Would you just keep him for later on in the season? And now when you talk about this stuff with Brock Purdy and the concussion protocol, I mean, if he's not 100%, I don't really see the need for him to start this week. But either way, it's a quite a nice statement win for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're now 4-3. They're still climbing up the AFC North table, but another
4-3. Sorry, Shane, 4-3, and they've got the Bills next week, which is another crunch one. I mean, not to look too far ahead, but Monday Night Football, I believe, next week, or maybe Sunday Night Football, Bills Bengals. I mean, they really have to get that victory today to set themselves up for that game. But there's a bigger one. I know you're going to come to it. There's probably a bigger AFC conversation to be had after what we saw in the last hour.
Yes, read it and weep, folks. Not only have the Denver Broncos beaten the Kansas City Chiefs, I believe, for the first time in 16 games. They've won the Super Bowl more recently than they have beaten the Chiefs, and they played them twice a year. Not only that, but they've held Patrick Mahomes' and co.'s offense to just 9 points for the entire game. What has Denver gotten so right today? And is this it? This is the Broncos now? The same defense who, by the way, conceded 70 points to the Miami Dolphins a few weeks ago, keeping the Chiefs down to 9 points. How did they pull this off? What trickery is this we've seen in Denver?
It was quite a dominant defensive performance, and the type of performances that, if I was a Broncos fan, would be scratching my head that they hadn't been playing at this level, earlier in the season. And there was 2 kind of storylines leading into the game today. One of which was the adverse weather conditions. It looked like it was going to be a snowstorm. It was snowing, but obviously they kind of got the pitch back to what you would expect to see when you're watching an NFL game. And then it came out that Patrick Mahomes was dealing with a flu symptoms throughout the course of the week, and he didn't seem right, but he was going to suit up and play the game. And he didn't look right throughout the game. But I'm not going to, it'd be a disservice on the Broncos fan base and the team and everyone connected to be, picking up a storyline around the fact that Mahomes was deemed to be playing with a flu. He didn't look right. But again, I would say that was large parts down to a really solid defensive performance. And offensively, they did enough today. They weren't anything special. There was some silly decisions at times in terms of sacks on Wilson, and there was a fumble before halftime. They did turn the ball over a couple of times. But by and large, the Chiefs today just did not look at themselves. There was the opportunity. They held in the game because they're such a good team. when they weren't playing well, they held in the game. They were down by 8 and they were getting the ball back, and there was a muff punt, and there was around 7 or 8 minutes to go in the game, and the Broncos recovered a muff punt, and then they went in with it because of the field position. They got in quickly with a touchdown from Russell Wilson. They're caught in Sutton, and look, it's a big win for the Broncos. Like, bearing in mind the tough season they've had today, and like, there's not a great storylines coming out. Sean Payton was being questioned whether he'd lost the locker room already and things like that, and how he's not performing just here compared to what Hackett did last year. But they've got over the hump in a way, and they're 3-5, and they probably have some games coming up now. They'll think they can win, but ultimately now for the Broncos, for me, it's about consistency and putting this together. Because in the NFL, you get too carried away with a win, the following week it comes back to bite you very quickly.
Yeah, it seems that the bye week is coming at a bad time for Denver because they're going to a bye week next week and then having to travel to Buffalo the week after that. So it's still a tough road ahead for the Broncos, but still a fantastic win. To really, I think obviously because the rivalries in the AFC West are so intense, to get any win against a rival is huge for those guys. So fair play to them. But just like we felt like we were thrown back to a time where the Broncos could beat the Chiefs and do so convincingly, there was throwback jerseys in Seattle as the Seahawks ran out winners against the Cleveland Browns. And I know obviously there's kind of a lot of question marks over this Browns defense. Sometimes they can play fantastically and stop the 49ers and almost derail their season as it has, and sometimes they can ship 30 plus points, but they shipped 17 points to Seattle in the first quarter, and it just felt like they were chasing the game all day, even though it ended up being a 4-point game in the end. It just felt like they lost momentum really early there.
Yeah, the Seattle got out of a fast start, and to be honest, just as well they did, because they didn't play very well for large parts of the game. But the Browns defense did kind of get into the game, and there's a number of turnovers on Geno Smith, and it looked for large parts like from the second quarter onwards, it was very Browns orientated. It was very dominant by the Browns, but unfortunately, offensively, they can do enough, but they can't do more than that. They can't get themselves to that level where they're putting teams away. And I suppose playing complementary football, which is your defense does a job and puts you in a position to go and score. They were never putting the points away that they should have. And yet they left Seattle hanging around. Genuinely, I think like this was a game the Browns will again will look at this one and go, how did we not come out here with the victory? They allowed them to hang around. They had the pick and the interception towards the end with Julian Love, which looked at that side like the Browns were going to see out the game, and allowed them to drive down. And in a strange way, the Browns defense that was so dominant in the game started poorly early and finished poorly late, because they allowed Geno Smith to go down the field on them late on, and Smith and Jigba, the rookie wide receiver that looks a class player, got him to touchdown. But certainly one I think the Seattle will be relieved to get over the line, but not necessarily convinced by the performance that they had today. I think the Browns will be disappointed.
Yeah, the Seahawks are now sitting on a 5-2 record, which is pretty good going in the NFC. But I mean, there's been a couple of those wins that you just felt have been a little bit too tight. The Seahawks are, if you're talking about the teams that are good value for their record, I think they're probably their 5-2 record is probably better than their performances have been all season. And like you said, I mean, it's fortunate that they got a really good start against the Browns, because they just couldn't really keep the steam up. In terms of not keeping the steam up offensively, I mean, one of the teams that has really struggled all season in various different ways is the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know that there's a lot of pressure on the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, to be fired. And today they ran out, and for the bits of the Steelers game I saw, I thought offensively they sort of lacked imagination, as is the case with a lot of teams these days. But it wasn't made, or things weren't helped with the fact that Kenny Pickett went out of the game and Mitch Trubisky went out there and threw 2 interceptions, and they ended up losing 20 points to 10 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. How did you feel that this game went? Were the Jags worth their win, or was it the Steelers that kind of lost it?
Jags worth their win and more, to be honest, Shane. I felt this was one of the games that sometimes we look at an NFL score and say, oh, it was a little bit nip and tuck and tighter. Yeah, it was, but the Jags, for me, were always comfortable in this game. The adverse weather conditions, not in snow necessarily, but more rainfall, made the pitch and the conditions very difficult. And like where you got a Steelers offense that doesn't do a lot consistently in terms of moving the ball up and down the field to play in those conditions, it was never really going to be fruitful for them. And Lawrence dealt with it much better than which the Steelers did. Now, in saying that, Lawrence had 3 interceptions in the first half. So again, they were doing everything in their power to keep Steelers around, but Kenny Pickett went out with an injury. Mitch Trubisky came in and didn't really do a lot either. And it took an Travis Etienne reception touchdown from Lawrence to put the game away. But I think over the course of the 4 quarters, the best team came out with the win, and they were very comfortable. It was a case of, I wouldn't say they were toying with them. It was always, if they needed to go up a level, it was there for them. Yeah, it's a big win for the Jags now. It's another win. They're gone 6-2, and no one's really talking about them. They're kind of quietly going about their business.
Yeah, it's one of the best records in the AFC, and we talk about the Chiefs managed to getting a knock the peg back against the Broncos, and of course they're playing in Germany next week against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, who ran out quite convincing winners against the New England Patriots today. Tua Tagovailoa is now 6-0 against New England, and look, obviously, I'm a Patriots fan. Based on what the reaction is in New England, this was a somewhat expected return to the mean after what was a statement win against the Bills last week. But Mac Jones, once again, it seemed like almost like every other game the Patriots had this season. The defense, not so bad. It still shipped a fair amount of points, but had good points and good flashes. But when the Patriots had the ball for large periods of the game, just look flat, lack of imagination, difficult to get yards in the run against a pretty good run defense. And then just when something was starting to build, Jones throws an interception and the game gets lost again. And in fairness to the Dolphins, I mean, they're a good team. They ran out to win, but it seems like the Patriots are coming back to the mean after what seems like a one-off big win against the Bills last week.
Patriots starting off well. I mean, they took the lead and they looked to be stifling Tua, and there was an interception of Tua at different periods of the game. But defensively, over the course of 4 quarters, when your offense is not doing it consistently, you just put some more pressure on them. And you're going up against the Dolphins offense, which is expansive. We saw there was a big touchdown reception to Hill. Waddle got in the act. Mostert got a touchdown. I mean, they just seem to, when they play at home in particular, I mean, they're averaging 30. I think they put up 30 plus points in every game at home this season. Like, there's very few teams, with the exception maybe the Chiefs and even the Ravens in the FC, that can live with that and go in there and put those type of points up and go blow for blow, drive for drive. And I'm not necessarily saying it was a blow type of victory, but it felt that way. Despite the fact that the Patriots got close in the second half with the Schuster touchdown, he always felt that the Dolphins would do exactly what they do, which is go drive immediately on the field, put the game away, and essentially that's what they did. And look, it just makes for a big game next week in Frankfurt, bearing in mind you've got the Dolphins coming off that victory, having lost last weekend, and now you've got the Chiefs in the same scenario. They've lost unexpectedly this evening, and they're going to be going up against the Dolphins, looking to rebound. It makes for a great game.
Yeah, it's a crunch clash there. And just one last thing with the Patriots, I know that the Patriots were 1 for 9 on third down conversions, and again, you don't win games playing like that. But one thing that's made this week different is the fact that things started an hour earlier, and we're after getting an extra hour of sleep this morning. But in the city that never sleeps, there was a battle for New York, which wasn't necessarily the highest quality matchup in history, which the games between Giants and the Jets never really are. But it seemed like the Giants found a way to lose this game. The Jets managed to get a field goal to send it to overtime and then win it by another field goal in overtime. After the Giants seemed maybe not in control, but seemed like they could have had it and could have found a way to seal the deal. Obviously you're a Giants fan. You were watching after seeing United lose the Manchester Derby when the New York Derby's on. You were hoping for a win, and it just didn't happen.
Not a good day for derbies in the O'Leary household, but the Jets' first down on third down was on the very last drive of the game. That's how dominant Giants defensively were, with the exception of the Brees Hall touchdown in the game. And in fairness, I got to give to the Jets defense as well. Like, they did everything to stop the Giants. And fortunately, the Giants, they're now back in a situation where there's no free quarterback, because Tyrod Taylor went out of the game early and he's now in hospital dealing with a condition. Daniel Jones doesn't look like he's going to come back, and they're relying on the third string Danny DeVito, who ran in a touchdown. And essentially, I think he only had 2 completed passes in the entirety of the game. I think Giants, your hardage on the game was -7. Essentially, they just ran the ball. And we're happy to punt it because they were so dominant on defense. And they just found a way to lose the game, which, like, as many an NFL fan out there won't feel sorry for the Giants, because they're equally frustrated how their own teams don't navigate victories. But the Giants looked like they were doing the right thing in terms of kicking a field goal at the end to go up 6 points with 24 seconds to go. And they missed it and gave the Jets a little bit of life. And the Jets found a way at the very clinical moment in the game where they hadn't done anything for 3.5 quarters. When I say 3.5, 3 quarters and 14 minutes, they found a way to get down the field with 24 seconds to go to kick a tying field goal. And then, look, I think any NFL fan, when that happens, you kind of know the momentum is on the side of the team that just come back. And yeah, they got over the line. Jets moved to 4-3. And there was a big watch party in Wiltshire tonight. All the Jets fans who were at that will be very pleased. And I think at this stage for the Giants, unfortunately, it looks like the season is now over and they'll have to consider maybe potential trade possibilities on Tuesday. And I don't even know where they're going to go with a quarterback situation for next weekend, because I don't think it's prudent or productive for the team to be playing with the third string quarterback. They're going to have to find someone elsewhere, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's amazing when we were talking about quarterback crises in New York. We were talking about the Jets a couple of weeks ago, and it seems like Aaron Rodgers is coming back fit. The guy that they originally wanted, being Kirk Cousins, goes off injured today, and now they're sitting at 4-3, almost out of nowhere. It's like, where did the Jets come from here? Just to read us some stats, just to for those who didn't see the game, just to let how the Giants approached this. In passing, Tyrod Taylor had made 7 attempts for a total of 8 yards, completed 4 of them, and Tommy DeVito completed 2 passes out of 7 for a total yardage of -1. But Saquon Barkley had to run the ball 36 times. I don't know if any running backs in the Irish League, if Sean McVay or any of those guys are listening, what is it like to be given the ball 36 times? You must be aching for months afterwards, never mind the week. So it just seemed like that was just literally trying to grind out a win. And Zach Wilson on the other side of the ball, I think it's very different story. They tried to pass it, and eventually he got a touchdown. And it's two very different approaches going on there in New York.
Yeah, very much so. It wasn't the best of games, it's fair to say. Actually, funny you touched on Kirk Cousins. I hadn't put that into the notes, Shane, but it's probably worth discussing that, because like the Vikings have gone 4-4 tonight, and there's a lot of Vikings fans will be very pleased with the fact that they're back at 500. In bearing in mind the start of the season, they've had 2 great wins of late, but unfortunately, it looks like Kirk Cousins is gone for the season. Haven't done his Achilles this evening. Similar kind of injury to what Aaron Rodgers got, and it'd be interesting to see where they go from there on the quarterback carousel. Do they feel that the rookie quarterback can take it on? They brought in a 6th-round pick in Hall, but again, I think they might find themselves in a similar situation going forward, whether that's really sustainable.
Yeah, it's tricky as well, because that seems to be the one thing that the Vikings had going for them, was having Kirk Cousins when things weren't working early on in the season. They only started getting things clicked back into place again, and unfortunately lost that asset. But moving on now, I think we have to look south every now and again, and the Indianapolis Colts played the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints, despite being very kind of hit and miss this year, ran out quite convincing enough winners, 38-27 against the Colts. Gardner Minshew threw an interception, but was still relatively decent, I thought, for the Colts. But the Saints, the better team in this game.
Yeah, this is the thing that we all picked the Colts because we felt to be kind of a similar game to last week's game against the Browns, which was up and down the field, a bit of a shootout. And for large parts, it kind of felt like that way. But the Saints offensively today looked the kind of offense that I think a lot of people felt we'd see going into the season, which was Derek Carr connecting with Olave, and to have Kamara back. Kamara came back there a couple of weeks ago, and he's been a bit slow in getting going, which is understandable in a way. But tonight, it was like Kamara of old, the rushing touchdown, reception touchdowns. But Derek Carr tonight looked like the Derek Carr that a lot of Saints fans were thinking they were going to get coming in on the back of that free agency signing. He looked a lot more comfortable tonight. I don't know whether it was because of the offensive line or what went about it, but he looked so much more. And Taysom Hill over the past couple of weeks has also come to the fore, because they were using him in that kind of wild card position, the quarterback, where he was rushing in touchdowns. He ran in 2 tonight. And when you can utilize him, it's another weapon to the team. And they hadn't been really doing that this season. So interestingly, that's coming back. It came back last week, albeit they lost. But it's a big win, bearing in mind the NFC South is so wide open. A lot of people would have felt the Colts would have won that game, but the Colts have now lost 2 games on the bounce at home, and 2 games in which to look at and go, we put up a lot of points and you find a way to lose. It's probably the nature of the Colts team that we're going to see this year under a head coach that's offense orientated, will score points but will struggle defensively.
Yeah, I mean that's. I guess we're nearing the roundup of the things that kind of caught our eye. I'll go with one quick thing just that caught my eye beforehand. The Arizona Cardinals. I had a lot of hope going into the season that they would be the ones that can kind of build momentum and not be the ones who are in pole position, let's say, to get to be the top draft pick and draft Caleb Williams. But from what I saw today, I mean, they ended up scoring 17 points in the fourth quarter, but they just completely lost control of the game against the Ravens, I thought. And there was one pick that Joshua Jobs threw in particular, which I just thought was very sloppy. So the Cards fans, I'm sorry if I may have. I was hoping that they would be better by now than they are, but they've fallen back to 1-7. I think that's a fair reflection of the way they were playing. Is there anything else around the league that caught your eye, Brian?
Yeah, I think we have to kind of just, before we close out, just touch on the Cowboys. I mean, they were coming off the bye week. They had struggled in the previous game against the Chargers, albeit they won. And people were kind of touching on, in a good way, in a positive way, how well the Rams have played this season. It's a bit of a surprise story. You got the wide receiver, the rookie 5th-round pick, having such a great season. But they got blown out. They were. I think this game was over by halftime. I think the Cowboys put up 33 points in the first half on this Rams defense, which has been quite good this year. It was some win, and it just makes for a really enticing game because they play the Eagles next week. The Eagles, kind of similar kind of game to when they played the Commanders at home, found a way to win late against the Commanders, and now they're going to play next week against the Cowboys, and it's a big one because they're only one game back, and if they were to beat them, they go ahead of them on the tiebreak and essentially be top of the division. So maybe the Cowboys fans should be just pleased and allow the team to go quietly about their business. But we know what the Cowboys are like. That doesn't seem to happen. The Cowboys, when they lose, they go down very low. When they win, they go very high. I think we just need to see a bit of a balance act. But some win, bearing in mind the game they've got next week, it makes for a great game next Sunday.
Yeah, huge win. The games they pick on Sky Sports, sometimes it looked like they're a great matchup, but then during the game they end up being complete whitewashes or something. It's almost non-events. And like I said, the Cowboys scored 33 points in the first half, ridiculous. But the Cowboys, being the Cowboys, will beat up teams they can beat up on, and then when they come against the Eagles, they'll find a way to lose. And I think the Eagles are a kind of team that will never win big, but will always find a way to win. But that's for next week, and we'll have plenty of time to preview that and wrap that up. But as for this week, that's our initial our instant reaction from myself and Brian. Thank you very much for joining us. Please make sure you stay tuned for all of our content during the week. We'll do a full reaction on Tuesday night. I'm hoping to speak to somebody about the San Francisco 49ers for the field report this week, which I think is quite topical after their third loss on the trot, and there'll be plenty more besides. So make sure to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. And yeah, enjoy the extra hour of sleep.
Thanks, Shane.